Shaun, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you talk maybe a little bit about your current role and what's in your purview?
I can do that. Basically, my role, I'm the Director of Information Security for CommunityAmerica CUSO 1.
Mhm.
CUSO 1 is a credit union service organization owned by a credit union that basically provides services to other credit unions and other businesses. So with that, I deal a lot with the credit union, but not so much that as the other organizations, which are either wholly or majority owned subsidiaries of the credit union. So I serve as their CISO for them that they maybe couldn't either didn't have the budget or they just didn't have a need for a full-time CISO. So
Mhm.
similar to what you see as a virtual CISO, but I'm actually employed by the same company. I just have multiple business units. So
I understand. And what's within your purview? Is it kind of, go ahead.
it, it varies a lot depending on the organization.
Mhm.
Uh, some of them a little bit more mature. I'm more oversight, making sure policy, procedures, and all that place, and that technology is taking care of it. Some of the smaller organizations, jack of all trades. I'm combination of hands-on, working with technology and infrastructure, writing policies, or talking to potential customers. So
I see. Interesting. And how did you get into cybersecurity? I know that I we talked to so many members, and it's never there's no kind of single path. I know some people it's through the military, others go take a degree in computer science and then kind of switch to cybersecurity. There's kind of no one true path. But someone most recent interview was sales, believe it or not. What was it for you?
pure dumb luck, actually. I was at the time a Unix administrator, and I was
Hmm.
interviewing for a position, basically doing Unix and Linux administration with the state government. And interviews going good. It sounds like that. Oh yeah, this position's also the IT security officer. I'd get up to leave. I didn't want to do that stuff. I was a Unix person. No, 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 no. They started saying no. It's only about 10% of your time. So I accepted the position. Turns out they lied. It was far more than 10% of my time, but it turned out I had an aptitude for it. So my next role, I went full-time information security. I've been doing that ever since. So
Awesome. So it's almost like bait and switch. It's interesting that.
it was, but I was suited for it. I mean, at the time, I was also working on my master's, getting
Mhm.
getting my MBA. The combination of the technology side and having the MBA gave me the ability to really understand the technology, but also translate the terms used in technology so that somebody in business, somebody in HR, somebody in accounting could understand what I was saying, and translating the same thing to those business units were back to somebody who was pure technology that maybe didn't have those backgrounds. So
Mhm. Certainly. Well, it's being able to wear a business hat, not just the technology hat. I think it goes a long way because yes, it's kind of dealing with systems, dealing with software, hardware, but it's actually communicating across the organization and communicating with senior level executives on the board. I think
exactly.
having that skill set, it definitely goes a long way. Uh, it's definitely kind of now that we see the arc of the career, it's I'm sure you have a perspective on um, how maybe more junior professionals, as they're kind of pondering on uh, how to make a career in cybersecurity. I think the space has exploded in importance and scope for various reasons. But what would be your advice for someone who is just maybe starting, or maybe even in college, kind of looking at this space and considering making a career in cybersecurity? What will be the top three things in your
Uh,
view that they should focus on?
It's funny you should mention that. I actually teach college part-time information security for students who are
Excellent.
looking to get into the field. I don't know if I have a top three, but there's a couple things I look at. The first thing I say is don't be dazzled by the salaries. There's a reason there's a deficit in people available for the jobs. The job can be hard. The job can be hard. It can be stressful. There's a lot of burnout. If you're just looking at dollar signs and don't have that mental preparation, knowing that you're going to be on call, you're going to work long hours, that and the fact that nobody's going to give you a hug telling you good job, you're never going to be the hero. Understand that going in, you'll do a lot better. But if you're looking at just dollar signs and thinking it'll be cool, it's going to go south pretty quick. The second probably major thing is start off as a generalist. Don't go in saying I want to do forensics or I want to do pen testing. You can do that, but you're really seriously limiting your job opportunities. I find let the position let either your promotions or new jobs, let them decide your path for you.
Mhm.
I started as a generalist. I've specialized. I went back to generalist. It just what opportunities come up is a far better way to progress your career, because you can't plan, especially in information security, what's going to be hot 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. What's the threat? You may be going down a path that's a dead end. So just kind of learn what you can, take advantage of opportunities, and go from there. So
It makes a lot of sense. It's well, and certainly the early on going for breadth, not depth, makes a lot of sense because it's also it's interest and aptitude, right? Like, why are you more suited for GRC? Are you more suited for pen testing? And
right,
going in, it's not something you can answer right away. And to your point, to the first point, you really need to be passionate and curious about it, about the field long term, because if not, you will not be able to sustain the interest. You'll not be able to sustain
right.
uh, the positive attitude, given that everything that gets
Yep.
thrown your way. But the other side of it, you mentioned, it's cybersecurity executives are never heroes. One of the purposes of this kind of interview and the CISO series is to reverse that a little bit, because I think it is true that if the organization does well, the CEO gets the credit, or VP of sales, or the board. But if things go sideways and the organization is in headlines and not on the right way, then fingers start pointing, and I think it's totally unfair. And then that's part of the reason why we started this, is just want to put give the spotlight on the real heroes who are fighting the bad guys, but in the dark. And I think it's totally unfair that cybersecurity professionals don't get the credit for this. Like, they really day in, day out.
Well, unlike a lot of fields where if you make a change, you do this, you can see the result. If security folks do everything right, nothing happens. And that's really hard to show what your value is. It's like, we kept all the bad guys out. Well, we didn't see any attacks. Exactly. That's because what we're doing.
Well, let me take my vacation, and you will see some, right?
Yep. If you replace a network, replace servers, make things more efficient, people notice that. It's really hard to show what you're doing when your job is to prevent things from happening. So
Well, maybe showing the logs and see how many attempts to find a port that's open
yeah.
will give them an idea of what's out there, right? The nastiness is just really.
Yeah. Metrics are the key on that, being able to show. It's like, we were scanned 10 million times over the last 2 weeks. What? What do we do to stop? You don't stop it. You focus on the important stuff that's going to hurt us. So.
Yeah, you build a fortress, just make sure you don't leave the door open, right? Because it's
Yep.
That's awesome. And I guess now that we are getting close to the end of the year, and given that a lot of people think, well, 2023, there was a lot of headwinds with macroeconomic environment, things like this. But keeping the cybersecurity hat on, what do you think will be the top three challenges for cybersecurity professionals? Whether it's some of them maybe kind of prevalent now, but what do you think will give cybersecurity professionals a headache, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, as we get closer to 2023?
I've thought about this a lot over the last couple of months, just trying to think what it is. There's so many different things. If I had to predict it, the first one would be business email compromise. Reason for that is everybody's trained on phishing. We all know, do not click the email that says IRA Nigerian Prince, share my money. The problem is business email compromise. It's from a legitimate sender. Their email has been compromised. You're getting a legitimate sender you've communicated with before, sometimes even with files that are from that same person you've seen before. How do you know if it's safe or not? It's really hard, especially if somebody you only talk with every couple months. It's very easy. I've seen it happen at multiple organizations where they get an invoice they've had before. Hey, we still haven't got payment on this. By the way, we changed our ACH information. Please use the new bank. And whoops, $200,000 out the door because they sent it to the wrong place. So I think that and the emerging threats, the tactics are changing. So it's not just phishing, and the business email compromise goes against the standard red flags we tell our users about. Look for misspellings. Look for this. It comes from a legitimate sender. It's not a misspelled domain. They do a really good job. Somebody's spell checking for them. They're proofreading it. They're very well done. They're targeting it, and they have real information. So It's going to be very hard to educate users and prevent that.
So it's really almost like it has almost more to do with third-party risk, right? If someone, you're a vendor or an organization you're working with, their email server gets compromised. So the email, to your point, it's not a misspelled domain. It's not nothing kind of gives away the fact that the email was compromised. It was completely legit. So it's what kind of, I need to double click on that, because most of the time to your point, when people talk about phishing, it's misspelled domains, it's suspicious looking PDFs, it's like text that it's clearly written by someone who doesn't speak English very well. I mean, it's all kind of the red flags that you can, with a trained eye, it can kind of pinpoint right away. But for something like this, is there kind of a solution for, other than calling the person and saying, "Hey, I just received this request to change banking details. Is it real?" Is there only kind of defense against this is to have like almost a two-factor authentication and have an independent confirmation, like a live confirmation on things like this? I mean,
Well, that was almost the segue into my next risk. Actually, is going to be third party risk, but I don't consider this the third party risk as much. 9 times out of 10, when I've seen this, it's because whoever it is, maybe they're not even a supplier, they're just somebody you've done business with.
mhm.
It's because they have, let's say, a Microsoft 365 for their email, and they didn't have MFA enabled. Somebody gets in there and they see their emails and do all that. But really, there's a lot of companies out there that I've seen say, "Hey, we can detect this," where a lot of the traditional phishing stuff can't. I'm not sold on that, because they're using artificial intelligence to basically do behavioral analysis. That would work if I'm getting an email from somebody on a daily basis. But if it's somebody I corresponded with 6 months ago and that was the last email, and I get something new, behavior analysis is not going to pick up on that necessarily. So I'm a little bit worried, but really it goes back to the user. Were you expecting this file? Yes or no? Were you expecting this email? If not, be suspicious. Basically, be suspicious of all emails. But if it wants you to do something, be more suspicious.
Well, especially, specifically like changing banking details. I think in kind of B2C world, I know there's a lot of, not a lot, but it's certainly in the news when someone is buying a house, a kind of a large purchase, and then the email communication between the buyer, the broker, and the bank somehow gets compromised, and they get the down payment gets routed to the bad guys. I mean, it's certainly is happening, but I guess being always vigilant and doing the second kind of verification independent of the
Yep.
email as a channel. Because if
That's
you
what
ask
we've had to do.
if you ask them of the email, like, is it can you confirm? Yes, I confirm, right? But if
Yeah,
if
you're
talking about-
replying back to the bad guy who's already sent the email.
exactly. And you said the third one was the third party.
The second one actually would be third party risk.
Mhm.
We mentioned employment, people getting to the field. There's such a shortage of information security folks. A lot of people are outsourcing to third party vendors for process and all that. The problem is we all talk about due diligence on our third party vendors. Do we really check it? We get a questionnaire. We look at their SOC 2 type 2. We do anything like that. But how much visibility do we have? And it's getting more and more common to see companies get ransomware. Ransomware is happening all over the place. If they do ransomware and exfiltrate the files that vendor holds, and it's your files, it doesn't matter if the vendor do it. Your customers or your clients or whoever it is, they're going to talk to you. They're going to see you were responsible for that relationship. It's your problem, and it really is. The more we outsource, the more that we're not outsourcing the responsibility. We're just outsourcing some of the work. So I see that getting bigger just as things go on.
Certainly. And is it more kind of, does it have to deal with the cloud when people are kind of more comfortable using cloud services and hosting sensitive information really with a third party that is reliable?
I don't think it's really cloud necessarily. It's just overall. It doesn't matter if it's a hosted data center. It doesn't matter if it's on somebody's laptop sitting in their basement and they're the only person working on it, or the cloud. If their controls aren't up to snuff, or even if they are up to snuff, you get a really determined attacker that gets in there. Their data breach is still your data breach. So,
because they have your data. I mean, they essentially one way or another, they either they're hosting or they have access or
right. It's your data. They have it. And even if their controls are just as good as yours or even great, you can still get ransomware. The ransomware actors they're evolving. They're evolving faster than a lot of our security controls can keep up. So then
Yeah.
that kind of leads me into my third risk, really ransomware. The tactics have changed. They're not holding your files for ransom. They're doing that partially, but they're also charging you a ransom. Say, hey, we've got your files. You want them back? You pay us. But if you don't pay us, we're going to extort you and we're going to release all these files on the dark web. So now it's an advanced persistent threat. They get in there, they basically have your files, they're going to release them, and they're encrypting it. So the tactic from 2 or 3 years ago, oh, just restore from backup. You can do that, but your files are still gone. They're still out there and getting used by somebody. So
Yeah. Sounds like a lot still. But it's interesting because I mean the question was what will be top of mind for people 12 months from now. It seems like a lot of them, some of those things they're not emerging. I mean they're kind of current.
they're evolving is what they're doing.
Evolving, exactly. So there will be more of the same in 2023 because I think some of those three specific areas, the survey that we did of all Affinia members, like those three were fairly high on the list of kind of issues and problems that the people kind of top of mind. They perceive them as important. That's great. And I guess kind of the other question is kind of switching gears a little bit with Affinia. Kind of we're always looking for ways to provide value for members, but not creating too much noise. We kind of dislike this idea of sending daily emails. I think it's way too much. I think weekly is kind of about the right cadence, and we can learn as we go. We try certain things work, other things don't. From kind of your perspective, what are some of the things we do that you like, that you find valuable? What are some of the things we do that maybe we should stop, and what's missing? What is that we, in your view, could add that will provide value that to members that we're currently not doing?
Well, I'm still very new to the group, so I don't have a whole lot of bad to say, but your comment about with daily emails would be too much. Right now, getting them weekly is right. When I get the weekly email, I open it, I read it. If it was something daily, it would probably get old and I'd probably get set up a filter and not see it. So I'd say that's probably what you're doing right. And probably more just opportunities for people to get to know people, like doing the interviews here. I haven't actually went out to look at other people's interviews yet, but knowing that that's something that's out there is probably something I would do. But I think probably one thing I'd like to be able to see a little bit more of is actually be able to look through the membership, find people who are more local to me. I don't think there was that ability where I could actually sort by maybe metro area, by zip code, or even a radius, but just something where I could look and find my peers that are close. Or I think I could look by industry if I remember correctly.
You can look by geo as well, but I think geo more like state and city. It's not by a radius because it's a little bit tricky because and to your point, a lot of people are working from home, or they're kind of they're in the office Tuesday through Thursday. So it's getting fuzzy because in the past you can just look up the organizations. I mean, headquarters, and can assume that this person is working there. But now it's people more often than not are working remotely, and it's never kind of an exact science. But certainly you can use those functionalities. But to your other point, as far as interaction is concerned, as I mentioned, we're launching in a few days. We're launching a Slack channel for members, and kind of the intent there is to provide a way for members to interact with each other and ask questions. I know I'm considering these 3 vendors. I really don't have time to do due diligence. Who's experience, or I've kind of a question about how to structure a presentation for the board meeting. Who can give me advice? So it's kind of vendor free, and it's meant no solicitation, no self promotion, no solicitation. So the intent is to create this kind of platform in addition to the membership website where you can ask a question, get an answer. So it's something that we're launching. It's something we're very excited about. So I'd love to get once it's live, I'd love to get your feedback on how to make it more useful.
Yeah, I'll do that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I like. I don't want to sit there and you'll try to look up a problem you're trying to solve. You're going to get 100 vendors out there. I mean,
Exactly.
a lot of times it's not a vendor solution you need. It's a process or just a thought or just an opinion.
Exactly. And then what we're hearing is that um, there is just an explosion in the number of vendors, and it's someone gave me it was 4,500 different organizations. I mean, who can manage even a fraction of that?
Right.
So adding a new tool is not always the solution, but kind of understanding what other peers in the same industry may have done when facing the same problem, I think could be
Yeah.
fairly
That's
beneficial.
a, that's actually the reason I like going to on-site conferences rather than remote. It's not so much to talk to the vendors or see the presentations, it's to talk to my peers, to network, to find out what they're doing. Even a vendor conference, you meet other people using them. You're going to get the real story from them, not the carefully found references that they're
Cherokee.
coaching that they want him to do. You're going to get the real story. And then you got somebody you can ask questions of later. And then I've still got contacts from 15, 16 years ago that I may only talk to them every couple of years, but I still keep in touch. Occasionally they'll ask
Absolutely.
a question like that. So that sounds great.
Absolutely. And well, and speaking of vendors, I know we have maybe a couple of minutes. I know for a lot of cybersecurity professionals, it's kind of it's a bit of a sore subject. I've talked to someone. Someone said they have their from Monday till Friday they have their phone on silent because they're just getting interrupted with phone calls. Someone said I only talk to colleagues on Slack, so I never an email, but I never open it, so they know it
Yep.
just almost like a honeypot for vendor pitches and things like this. So it's always uh, obviously like professionals rely on tools to do their job, but it's sometimes just untenable to deal with kind of outbound emails and phone calls. From kind of your experience going back, and you don't have to name names, but what are some of the things that, in your view, kind of vendors did that kind of impressed you in a positive way, and what are your pet peeves? Like, what salespeople do when they're trying to kind of get on your schedule that is just absolutely a non-starter?
I'm going to turn it around actually and go for the ones that irritate me. Basically, the cold calls, basically calling my cell, using Zoom info to just sit there and randomly get things on me. That then using the tactic when you go to a conference, hey, remember about 6 months ago we talked at this conference? No, we didn't talk. I know exactly who I talked to at that conference because what they're getting, we all know that they're getting the list of all the attendees and they're using that as a list to come sales. When I go to a conference, I've been to RSA before. The amount of sales calls I had far more sales calls than vendor booths I visited. I learned the lesson. Next time I go to a major conference like that, I'm going to have my IT department basically set me up with an alias email that I use to register. And as soon as the conference is over, I'll kill that email off. Then that note doesn't happen anymore. Then if I really want to talk to somebody, I'll give them a business card, say use this email. But the cold calls, that calling from a local number, they're spoofing their phones a lot of the time, and they'll call from what looks like the same town you're in or something like that. Turns out they're 1,000 miles away. I mean, if you're going to hide your number from me, that's why they invented caller ID in the first place. You're going to hide. I want to know who's calling me before I'm going to pick up. So anymore, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to let any call that comes in go to voicemail. If you don't leave a voicemail, I assume that it was a mistake. If you keep calling me and don't leave a voicemail, I'll block your number. Um, but things vendors have done that are good. A lot of the ones that really have something to offer that I'm interested in, they say, hey, here's the information. If you would like to talk about it, let us know. Otherwise, we'll leave you alone. Or have events where they're happy to talk to you, give you the information, but they're calling. It's like, if you want to let us know, just give us a call. Usually if I want to talk to a vendor, it's because I have something I'm looking for a solution for. Everybody who's calling me has a product that they're looking for for somebody that needs a solution. That doesn't always match. So
For sure, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Shaun, I know we're coming up on time. Where can you mentioned kind of peers connecting, networking, exchanging kind of information and advice. Where Athenia members can find you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Twitter? What's the best way to connect?
pretty much LinkedIn. I mean, I'm not a big fan of social media, but that's kind of a necessary evil in today's world. That's where most of my
Sure,
contacts are.
for sure.
I don't do Twitter and all that stuff. I think I'm a little bit too old for that. I've tried it. I don't like it. My kids do it, and same with Snapchat. I've seen it. I'm not all that impressed by it. So LinkedIn works for me. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Shaun, thank you so much again for your time. I think that this was great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. So.
Absolutely.